It is Monday. It's the 21st of July. I'm Moon Gon-young. This is ARIRANG News, live from Seoul. Our top stories today. Western countries are raising pressure on Russia over the downing of Malaysia Airlines Flight 17. The U.S. charges Moscow with supplying rockets and hiding evidence. Will this mark a turning point in the standoff between the West and the Kremlin? Korea's new finance minister and the central bank governor see eye to eye on the need to cooperate in supporting Asia's fourth largest economy, which is facing greater downside risk. And the conflict in Gaza escalates dramatically, with the Palestinian death toll now exceeding 400, 70% of whom are believed to be civilians. The United Nations convenes an Emergency Security Council meeting to discuss the crisis. We'll have those stories and more, but first, we begin with the Malaysia Airlines. So the battle for control at the crash site of Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 is entering a new chapter focused on the fate of victims, following reports of bodies being loaded into refrigerated railway carriages by the very people suspected of shooting down the plane. Well, Russian President Vladimir Putin has promised the Dutch Prime Minister that he will help to retrieve bodies in black boxes from the Ukrainian rebel-held crash site of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17. But the U.S. and British leaders keep their fingers pointed at Russia for nurturing the separatists suspected of bringing down the airliner. Our Son Jung-in has the latest.
A spokesperson for the Dutch government press service said the latest conversation between Prime Minister Mark Rutte and Russian President Vladimir Putin focused on practical matters, including the handing over of the black boxes that were seen being retrieved from the crash site. The spokesperson said Putin vowed his full cooperation in handling the case, as well as allowing unrestricted access to the site. Prime Minister of self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic Alexander Borodai said they were ready to hand the black box to the International Civil Aviation Organization.
We are keeping the black box in Donetsk. We are waiting for international civil aviation representatives to arrive.
The rebel leader also said the bodies of victims recovered from the crash site would remain in refrigerated containers at a train station in the town of Torres in the meantime. International monitors had reported that the human remains were headed to an unknown site, expressing concerns about their whereabouts. Western leaders are furious about the manhandling of corpses and are urging Putin to take serious actions in helping international rescuers bring the bodies home. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, who described the scenes of separatists removing bodies as grotesque, said during an interview with CNN that the U.S. knows with confidence that Ukraine did not have a weapon capable of downing a jet. He added that it was pretty clear a missile system had been transferred from Russia. Meanwhile, an urgent vote led by Australia is expected to take place within the next 24 hours in the UN Security Council on a resolution that would condemn the shooting down of the plane and demand those responsible be held accountable. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
Now, one day after the deadliest day of the Israeli-Hamas conflict thus far, world leaders are moving, including U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. Now, Department spokesperson Jen Psaki confirmed that Kerry will fly to Cairo today to work on a ceasefire agreement with Egyptian officials, whom you'll remember had proposed a truce last week that Hamas had rejected. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council has convened an emergency meeting. Now, they're discussing a draft resolution by one of the council members, Jordan, which, among other things, is calling for the withdrawal of Israeli occupying forces and lifting restrictions in and out of the Gaza Strip. Sunday was the deadliest day in nearly 2 weeks of violence there, leaving the most number of casualties on both the Palestinian and Israeli sides. More than 60 Palestinians in one crowded Gaza City neighborhood, bringing up the total death toll to well over 400. Meanwhile, 13 Israeli fighters were killed in an ambush that same day. They were all members of the Golani Brigade, and the Israeli military said it is investigating Hamas claims that they have captured an Israeli soldier. Now, shifting our focus back to the Korean Peninsula, in recent weeks, North Korea has increasingly been flip-flopping. The regime, which has repeatedly proposed putting an end to slandering between the two Koreas, threatened retaliation against Seoul and Washington's criticisms over its recent missile testing. And not just this, Pyongyang also sent mixed signals about its participation at the Incheon Asian Games this fall. Choi Yoo-sun has the details.
North Korea's powerful National Defense Commission has given an ultimatum to Seoul and Washington, saying their isolating policies towards Pyongyang will only be met with retaliation. Citing its recent proposals to Seoul that the two sides refrain from slandering each other, the commission said it has done everything possible to improve inter-Korean ties and that the time has come for a final decision. The latest threat comes after Seoul and Washington, as well as the international community, strongly criticized Pyongyang's recent short-range missile tests. North Korea also flip-flopped in regards to its participation at the upcoming Asian Games hosted by the South. Days after walking out of last Thursday's inter-Korean talks on its attendance, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un highlighted cross-border reconciliation and cooperation through the sporting event on Sunday.
Saying the Asian Games will be an important opportunity for the two Koreas to improve ties and alleviate distrust, he added sports are sacred and should not be used as a political bargaining chip for rebellious powers.
Reporting on Kim's observation of the North Korean national football team, Pyongyang's state media added North Korea has decided to send a delegation of athletes to the Incheon Asian Games from September 19th to October 4th. The North's apparent flip-flopping is thought to be its way of pressuring the South to return to negotiations. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News.
So sending mixed signals to the South, test-firing missiles one day, and then talking about reconciliation and cooperation the next, and then threatening a retaliation. Is this a new tactic under leader Kim Jong-un? I mean, how should North Korea's latest actions be assessed? Well, our Hwang Sang-mi posed those questions to Robert Carlin, former U.S. State Department official dealing mostly with North Korea.
The North Koreans will never be one thing or the other. And here's the difference. Up until the point at which negotiations actually start, you'll see both streams going side by side. Once negotiations start, you'll see much less, and in some cases none at all, of these what we consider provocative actions.
You've also been holding informal talks with North Korea. Do you see any changes in perhaps their willingness to engage?
As far as you can judge, they really keep trying to figure out what it would take to get a positive response from the United States. So I don't think there's been a shift. I think they're just frustrated because they think they can't get traction.
We see China and South Korea getting close together, and on the other part, we see Japan and North Korea getting closer together. How do you assess that?
And also the Russians and the Americans not being on very good terms. It looks pretty dismal, the landscape, for putting this back together again in any way that it can be productive. So I suspect that people are going to have to think about a new forum in order to overcome these really negative trends.
So if Prime Minister Abe does visit North Korea, how will that affect the trilateral alliance between Washington, Seoul, and Tokyo?
If it were to happen tomorrow, let's say, I think it would be a shock. If it happens some point in the future after different capitals are able to consult and people get more comfortable, maybe it won't be quite as negative.
Do you think it will harm the trilateral cooperation at all?
I think it will. I think there'll be an effort to pretend that it doesn't, but in truth, I think it will be something that people will have to work very hard at to fix.
How likely is it for us to see Kim Jong-un meet with Xi Jinping or Prime Minister Abe?
I would bet that he would meet with Prime Minister Abe before he meets with Xi Jinping. It's just my sense that that's liable to happen first. Yeah.
Now, in the latest attempt to shore up its false claims to Korea's Dokdo Island, the Japanese government is working toward digitizing related documents. Japan's Nihon Keizai Shimbun reported on Monday that the government plans to compile and categorize data from local governments and historians and also create an English translation version. Now, a website with the data is planned for next year and will also include information on the disputed islands known as Senkaku in Japan and Diaoyu in China. The paper went on to say that Japan's move is in response to similar moves out of Korea and China.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Moon Gon-young live from Seoul.
Mobile shopping market for the dual use of the Korean name East Sea and the Japanese name Sea of Japan. The aging of Korea's population raises a number of economic challenges. Chief among them is how to provide for the elderly in their time of greatest need. Now, new OECD data shows that while there are currently more than 5 working-age Koreans supporting every senior citizen, that number will drop to just under 2 by the year 2036, and the number has seen a steady decline over the years. Back in the 50s, there were about 15 working-age Koreans for every 1 elderly citizen. Currently, only Chile and Mexico have more economically active people supporting every senior among OECD members, but by 2036, only 4 nations will have less people supporting the aged. 97 days have passed since the Seoul ferry sank in waters of southwestern Korea, taking with it the lives of more than 300 people. With still more questions and answers about who and what was to blame for the disaster, the National Assembly on Monday kicked off a special parliamentary session. They're seeking to pass a special bill that should answer those questions, but as our Kim Young-gil reports, the rival parties will first have to make some compromises.
Lawmakers ended an extra parliamentary session in June without much progress to speak of regarding a bill that's aimed at determining the cause of April's ferry disaster. They'll hope to resolve their differences during this session, which opens today and runs through August 19th. The legislation calls for the creation of a parliamentary inspection team and outlines measures to provide compensation for the families of the victims, some of who have been on a hunger strike since last week, demanding that the bill be passed by this Thursday. For that to happen, the nation's 2 main political parties will first have to resolve their differences. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy wants a special judicial police officer appointed to the parliamentary inspection team to ensure the effectiveness of the investigation. The ruling's Henry Party has raised concerns about the idea, saying it could disturb judicial order and the division of powers prescribed by Korea's constitution. Instead, the ruling party has proposed appointing a special prosecutor to conduct investigations at the request of the inspection team. The unified main opposition has accused the ruling party of trying to block passage of the special bill, while the ruling party is blaming the main opposition for playing politics with the issue heading into the July 30th by-elections, where 15 parliamentary seats will be decided. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
Now, shifting our focus, Korea's new finance minister sat down for talks with the chief of the nation's central bank early this morning, with both agreeing that there are growing downside risks stemming largely from April's ferry tragedy on this economy. But the finance minister made it clear that any decision over the nation's key interest rate falls solely upon the central bank. Our Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
Cooperating to support the Korean economy. That's what the nation's top 2 economic policymakers agreed upon in their first meeting. Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan, who took office last week, met with the Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol on Monday. They both shared views that the pace of economic recovery at home is slowing amid downside risks stemming from sluggish domestic demand, largely due to the ferry disaster in April. The two also shared concerns over structural problems within the domestic economy, such as the imbalance between the nation's exports and domestic demand and the divide between corporate and household income. Based on that understanding, Che and Yi agreed that it's important to integrate fiscal and monetary policies to tide over the problems at hand. That, however, will be done under one precondition, respecting the unique role of the two different bodies. Finance Minister Che emphasized that a change in the nation's key interest rate is a decision that the central bank makes independently. The meeting comes amid growing speculation that the appointment of the finance minister, who is widely known to be pro-growth, may exert pressure on the central bank to cut the key rate. While the new finance minister has not directly addressed the need for a cut, his recent remarks point to easing monetary policy to spur growth. Hwang Ji, ARIRANG News.
Well, here in Korea, we should very well in the middle of monsoon season at this time of the year, but it seems that things are turning out quite differently this year, obviously. Rain has been hard to come by so far this summer, and this so-called dry monsoon is having an effect on the buying habits of Koreans as well. Our Connie Kim, take a look.
The monsoon period here in Korea, which usually falls from late June to late July, is when the nation receives about 40% of its precipitation for the whole year. But weaker than normal atmospheric pressure from the North Pacific has made for dry conditions so far this summer, and it's had a direct effect on consumer spending.
Rain boots and umbrellas are usually flying off the shelves by now, but not this year.
Our sales have been dominated more by people going on vacation this year. Folding tables and camping-related items have been quite popular.
Sales of leisure or folding tables have jumped the most among all summer products, followed by camping and barbecue gear. It's a sign that consumers are adjusting to the abnormally dry weather conditions. Some 400 millimeters of rain fell on Seoul from July 1st to the 15th last year, while just 23.5 millimeters has fallen this year. As such, fewer people are buying rain boots, umbrellas, and other rain-related products, including dehumidifiers, which have been affected the most among all electric items. The retail industry has also had to adjust its marketing strategies.
Compared to last year, we aren't featuring dehumidifiers or clothing that usually sells well during the monsoon period. We've cut out our coverage of these items by about 20 to 30%.
Instead, they're promoting more vacation-related products, which have enjoyed a sales boom 2 to 3 weeks earlier than normal. Industry insiders say some retail shops have already started focusing on their upcoming fall products, as the monsoon season isn't forecast to be as severe as in years past. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Well, this could be a breakthrough for AIDS patients and their families, as the cure for AIDS may be one step closer. Korean researchers have found a substance that can work as a vaccine by blocking the AIDS virus. Our Shin Se-min explains how this works.
Over 35 million people worldwide are currently infected with HIV, the virus that causes AIDS. There is no cure and there's no vaccine, although Korean researchers believe they may be on the right track toward developing one. A team from Seoul National University says they have discovered an enzyme called SAMHD that breaks up the RNA of the part of virus that contains the infection. They say it leaves open the possibility of completely blocking off the infection in the first place.
The HIV gene is composed of RNA strands, and the SAMHD1 cellular enzyme takes direct aim at the gene and completely restrains the virus from developing.
The team is optimistic that the SAMHD1 enzyme can be developed into an AIDS vaccine over time.
Even if the virus mutates, as it normally does, the newly discovered enzyme will identify the changes, thereby raising the possibility of creating a vaccine.
That would take time, though, up to 10 years to be exact, as the research team is now just wrapping up their basic cell research. The new findings have been published in the medical journal Nature Medicine. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
It is now time for our daily arts and culture segment, and of course for that our Im Yoon-hee joins me live in the studio, so let's find out what she has in store for us today. Good afternoon to you, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon.
So it seems like we have a lot of musicals for us to enjoy here in Korea.
Right, so today I have another musical that's recently opened. It's another Broadway hit, but along with the musical I have a couple other performances that show you the art of music and dance. Take a look.
It's a musical where the singing is just as important as the dancing. 42nd Street was first converted to a Broadway musical in the 80s and has been shown since on stages around the world. Set during the height of the Great Depression, this tap dancing bonanza fills the stage and air with its upbeat and memorable music. The musical made its debut in Korea in 1996 and was an instant hit, now being shown in the country for the 11th time.
People can always relate to stories of dreams regardless of the time period. This performance is something that will get everyone's heart racing with the tap dancing and energy.
Beethoven is a pillar in classical music, tackled by many conductors around the world. And now Korea's own conductor of the people is showcasing Beethoven's Symphony No. 5 in C minor. Keum Nan-tae has been striving to connect the Korean public with Western classical music. And in this second installment of the series of Beethoven performances, Keum brings Beethoven's most well-known pieces to the stage. The Korea National Contemporary Dance Company is one of Korea's leaders when it comes to modern and contemporary dance. Their latest performance, Detour Space, is set to hit the stage later this week, with a nostalgic performance that aims to bring back a trend seen during the 80s and 90s, where small theaters, sometimes called 공강사랑, were the hot places to perform.
You know, Yoon-hee, like I said in the beginning, this is just one of the many musicals that we've been seeing being staged here in Korea, and this summer especially. And is this also the work of CJ Entertainment? Because we have seen that company produce many of these here.
Right, so they have been very active. They have really been pushing the Korean musical to be the next Hallyu or Korean wave. And so they have been pushing for a lot of big Broadway musicals to be produced here in Korea, like 42nd Street. They are actually behind that as well, and it has been shown in Korea before, and it is so far have been seeing very good results again. And I would imagine that they would have collaborations across the board there. Right, so they kind of have their their toes dipped in various different things. So they do have another collaboration with this musical. The K-pop jazz band Winter Play actually collaborated with the cast of the musical to create a new song called Dream Your Dream, and that is in celebration of the release of this musical.
Well, now, so let's shift to the next item that you showed us, Beethoven. What else do they have in plan for us?
Right, so this is a really interesting piece. Conductor Keum, he actually really wants to be known as the people's conductor. He's said in interviews over and over again, and he really wants to bring Western classical music to the people. So he takes these more well-known pieces, such as Beethoven's, a Symphony No. 5, and he'll take them and produce them like this. And so this performance, this series is actually called Beethoven's Vacation, and they have 4 different showings. This is the second installment, and so you'll see 2 more this year. So this is just his way of showing classical music to the public.
Right, so a year dedicated to Beethoven. All right, well, definitely something that we could all go and enjoy, especially in the summer heat these days.
Hot days, perfect time to enjoy it.
Well, Yoon-hee, thank you for that, and we will see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
We've started off our week with another hot one, and we have heat wave advisory and warnings in effect all across the entire nation now. So make sure to drink lots of water and stay out of the sun if possible. Now, although it looks cloudy today, temperatures are rising unimpeded. Some regions will see the highs into the mid-30s with high UV levels. Now, however, relief is on the way for us. A monsoon front is slowly moving northwards that will bring rain to the central region starting tomorrow night, and it's forecast to continue all the way until Sunday. Now going over to our temperature readings, Seoul will top out at 32 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak up to 32 and 29 degrees. And moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops over to 29 as well. Dokdo at 28, while Mankungang tops to 34. Well, that's all for now. Michelle Park, again, back to you.
Well, thanks, Michelle, for that. So another very hot day for us to endure. That's just about all for me at this hour. I'm Moon Gun-young. Check back with us at 4 p.m. Korea time for Business Today.